on 106.5 FM and online. It's the After 5 Guest with Wynne Thomas.
And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Steve Balsamo this afternoon. Thank you, Steve.
How are you, Wynne? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. We met several times in the past, but now we meet over the desk.
I think the last time I saw you was down at Swansea Bay Records.
That's right, yeah.
We were watching a showcase that Mike Kennedy was putting on.
Yeah, that's right, with Ellery Hanharad.
Ellery Hanharad and Keisha as well.
Yeah, yes, Keisha.
Yeah, some brilliant talent coming through in South Wales right now. That's what.
Absolutely fantastic, yeah. So then, let's talk about the new EP, which is Balsamo Collins and Riley. How did you all get together to write that? Because of the problems we've had over the last couple of years.
Well, I've known Andy Collins. I was in a band with Andy for many years, and And in fact, I used to watch, when I was 16, doing my O-levels, so long ago it was, when I used to see Andy bounce along my street, and I used to think, who is that guy? Because he was always surrounded by very lovely women.
Right.
And I thought, yeah, what's going on there? And he used to bounce along my street, and I kept watching him, thinking, who's that? And I saw him every day walking past. And then years later, I thought, I ended up getting in a band with him. We ended up touring around the world. So Andy and myself go back a long, long way. And Pete Riley I've known for a long time. He's a brilliant songwriter in his own right. He had a band called Treehouse, who was signed to Atlantic Records back in the day. They toured America. They went to live in America for a year, actually,
right.
or two. And he's toured with many, many bands. And he did a lot of songwriting with Amy Wadge, who's become one of the biggest songwriters on earth right now. And I've always been a fan of Pete's writing, and his voice is stunning. So we did a couple of songwriter rounds, which is like a Nashville-style singer-songwriter thing where you say you play one of your songs and you tell a little story about how it happens.
Yeah, I know.
And they're one of my favourite evenings, actually, because you get to learn a little bit about the band and people. So we did a couple of those pre the kind of lockdown. And during lockdown, Andy said, shall we do a Zoom thing where we all get together? And in the beginning, it was just trying to make sense of what was going on, you know. But then very quickly, we started picking up guitars during the sessions, and then during the week on WhatsApp, we throw ideas back and forth. And then, before we knew it, we had half a dozen songs. So we decided to record them at Tim Hamill's studio in Llangenach, near Llanelli. And this is where we're at. And we started playing a couple of little gigs, and it's just great fun. They're great. We have a great laugh. The songs are fun, and that's what we need right now, a bit of fun.
yes, right. It's nice to see that it was produced in Wales by Tim Hamill, who said Sonic One Studios. It's absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Well, it was, you know, Pete's got his own crew up in Liverpool, and we love going back and forth to Liverpool because And is the biggest Beatles nut on earth, and we love the city of Liverpool.
Oh, it's a fantastic place.
Great place, and great people, and great music city, obviously.
Yeah.
But it just so happened that we thought we'd bring Pete down to Tim's, and that's what happened.
Well, I want to take you back. Obviously, I met you a couple of times. I know of you. And I want to ask you about the mid-90s, where Jesus Christ Superstar, you were in that production.
Yeah.
Where Steve Balsamo became a well-known name in then. But was it a musical career you wanted to pursue then?
No, it's funny, actually. When it's almost like I took a certain door, and then with the sliding doors moment, my life for 10 or 15, 20 years went down a different path. Yeah. I started in bands in Swansea. We used to play the Coach House in Wine Street.
Oh, yes.
You know, amongst drinking beer and chasing women and getting into fights. We'd sometimes play a bit of music. And there were so many brilliant bands back then. You know, I've talked about it in other interviews before. There were bands like Pink Machine Gun and Baby Fire Breather. A singer called Rob Messer, who I met recently back at the Patty Pavilion at a gig. I hadn't seen him for years. So it was great catching up with those old guys. And Swansea had a great scene back then, and it's got a great scene now. So I started in bands, learning to write songs, and then I ended up going to Neath College for a little while and was in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar in the college.
Yeah.
And there was an open audition for Les Miserables, and I took a train literally at 3 o'clock in the morning up to London, did an open audition, got in, and then left Neath College. I was only there for 6 months, learned how to drink 10 pints of Bowmind in the dark arts, but we can't talk about that. I've been warned off it by the dean of Neath College. But that's what happened with the late great Alan Good. And then I was off, and so I was doing an HND in music and performance and all of that. Didn't finish HND, but got an honorary one at the end of it. But so my training was then doing Les Mis for 18 months in Dublin and Edinburgh. And then on that run, one of the actors, a guy called Jonathan Greatorex, decided to give up being an actor and become an agent because he was sick of people moaning about their agent. So he became my agent, and then a few years later he said they were auditioning for Superstar, and he said, "Do you still know that big song, Gethsemane?" And the rest, as they say, is history. I ended up doing it in the 90s, and I had like 15 auditions, and it was over a year, and there was a big old... when I got the part then, there was a big kind of TV announcement, and I was in all the press and all that. It was fun. It was, looking back, you know, it's a crazy route into theatre. I don't think it would happen like that these days. There's so many amazing youngsters coming out of drama college, and they know so much about
So you were in the chorus of Les Mis, were you?
I was in the chorus of Les Mis, and I understudied the young romantic part called Marius. I got on once, and that was a nerve-wracking thing because the fellow who was playing it, Mark, he missed his train from... he was staying in Glasgow, we were in Edinburgh, he missed his train, and I ended up... going on at the last minute, and I still have nightmares to this day when about it. I really do. Absolutely nightmarish.
Yeah, so I mean, at the time the headline was "The Son of God is Welsh." You remember that?
I remember it well. And yeah, it was a brilliant experience when I got to meet loads of people, and yeah, I was watching a Tom Petty documentary the other day, and it was the making of Wildflowers, one of my favourite albums of all time. And Michael Kamen, who was the orchestrator, was in the documentary, did all the string arrangements and stuff. And I remember he called up my agent at the time and said, "Hey, come and I'd love to meet the fella playing Jesus." He'd come in to see the show and he wanted to meet me. So I just went around his house and hung out and talked about music and talked about Petty and all of that. It was amazing. And unfortunately he passed away a few years later. But so, I got to meet some extraordinary people and work with some extraordinary people.
So in Les Mis, who was playing Jean Valjean in those days?
There was a guy called... hang on a minute, my head is gone. It was...
Because Peter played that part, didn't he?
Peter's amazing. Peter's a great one. Jeff Layton, my gosh.
Oh, Jeff Layton. Right, yeah.
One of the best, actually. One of the most beautiful voices
He must have taken over from Peter, because Peter was in that as well.
Peter, yeah. I think Peter played it in town, and this was the first tour that went out.
Right, okay.
I think Jeff might have played it in town a bit, and then we were on tour with us. But Jeff, I still speak to Jeff now on social media. He's character.
Marvellous. So then the debut single was "Sugar for My Soul." Yeah. Did you write that?
I didn't write that song.
Right.
There's a whole story about that. It was written by the guy who produced the record, Pete Patesi, and another guy called Ali Thompson. And that was a whole... So then I get signed to Sony Records, and then I get to literally tour, go all over the world and meet loads of songwriters and meet loads of brilliant musicians. And then we released that song, and then I got dropped by Sony Records, but that's a whole other story for another day.
So I heard about you also in Superstar. Then I lost a little bit of touch of you after Sugar in My Soul. Then I picked you up again then in the Stories.
That's right.
Now, they were a good band. An early split with them, do you think?
I think like anything, when you're in a band, it was like a six-way marriage, really. And we did so much, and we got so close to breaking. Really breaking.
Yeah, because you had a fantastic sound, didn't you?
We had a good sound. There were some great songwriters in the band, and we sounded great together. The band was hot, and the stories is that Elton John heard us and picked us, give me a call at home. My daughter, who's now 16, she was about 2 years of age, and I remember bathing Izzy, and the phone went, and my wife came and said, "Hey, Elton John's on the phone." So we had a chat, and he loved the album so much that he invited us on tour, and we ended up touring with him and Celine Dion and Joe Cocker and Santana. We played a gig with up in the mountains of Italy.
And you had that West Coast America sound, didn't you? That was really hard to achieve, wasn't it?
Well, it was, we were 4 individual singer-songwriters, and that's when Andy Collins and then I had my solo band for Sony. A guy called Rob Thompson was part of that. So
Rob, I know Rob, yeah.
Rob came with me, and then Andy was working with Di Smith. So we got together, we literally wrote an album around Rob's kitchen table with cups of tea and glasses of wine at the same time. And then we put it together, made our own record, and then put it on our own label, and ended up getting signed to Warner Brothers. And we had a good run. We had 6 good years. But again, I've looked back at that and thought, certain things have to connect. The radio and television have to connect. And if I'm honest, a couple of radio stations which should have kind of gone on board, didn't quite 100% commit, and as a result, it didn't quite connect. But people like Bob Harris was a big, massive player in getting us a lot of
I've seen an interview you did with Bob, haven't you?
Yeah, we've done a load of stuff with Bob.
Yeah.
He's been brilliant to us over the years.
So you've worked with people like John Lord. John Lord, of course, would have been 81 yesterday. Yeah. What was that like working with that lunatic?
Well, John was, you know, despite the rock and roll band, John was one of the gentlest, lovely human beings I've ever met. And, you know, I grew up listening to Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and Deep Purple. They were my holy trinity of kind of rock, and that's where I learned all my high singing and screaming sort of stuff that I did in the Superstar days. But and how that came about was my friend Margot Buchanan, who's a great singer, and she's married to Paul Wickens, who's Paul McCartney's musical director. He plays keys for Paul McCartney. So Margot does a load of backing singing, and she's an artist in her own right. And she was, you know, responsible for getting me a load of great gigs, and I ended up singing at a thing called the Sunflower Jam. And the Sunflower Jam was put on with Jackie Pace, the wife of Ian Pace of Deep Purple, and her twin sister Vicky Lord, who's the widow now of John Lord. So I played a couple of these gigs, which were raising money for alternative cancer therapy, which is right up my street actually. And then I met John, and John liked the way I sang. Didn't know anything about my previous life in the theatre playing Jesus. Of course, Ian Gillan was the originator of the role of Jesus in Superstar on the album. So there was a bit of a connection. He liked my voice and said, "Hey, do you fancy coming touring?" So we went around the world for 5 or 6 years with John. I ended up writing a dozen songs with him that only one of them's come out, which there's an album waiting to be recorded.
Now, this is a story I was once told, okay? Now, this is true about you, I don't know, but I was told that Robert Plant got asked to one night to actually teach him how to sing falsetto.
No, it wasn't falsetto. It was harmonies.
Oh, but
I think he had the falsetto down, to be honest with you. But
so is it a kind of true story then?
How that happened was, so I've been around when, you know what I mean? It sounds like a name drop of doom here. But so Robert, I'm a massive Zeppelin fan, and he's like, as I said, one of the Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
And so I played a gig with John. No, prior to that, at Bob Harris's 60th birthday, we played a little set. The Stories played a little set, and I was and everyone had to dress like in 60s, 70s gear. Right, so I went as Robert Plant with leather trousers, football socks down the front, not the back. This is very important. And I went as Robert, and we finished our little set, and I was at the bar getting a Guinness, and this guy comes up next to me, says, "Oh, good singing," also getting a Guinness, and it was Robert Plant. I was like, yeah, wow, all right.
Yeah.
And he got up on stage and jammed with the band, which is incredible. And then a few years later, I was with a guy called Richard Desmond as part of a band raising money for teenage cancer with him and Roger Daltrey. And the band was made up of it was Russ Ballard from Argent, and who wrote Since You've Been Gone and all those big hits.
Yeah,
He's a great guy, actually. Russ, and it was Greg Lake from Emerson, Lake and Palmer on bass. Richard Desmond, who was like a big magazine tycoon, but he was a drummer before he became a billionaire. So he was, and then Roger sang, and then we got guests in. And Robert was one of the guests one day, and he was like, "Oh, I love your band," and this, you know, and all of that. He was just such a sweet guy. And then a few years later, I was playing with John Lord at a gig for Childline. It was called Childline Rocks, and there were the band Thunder were there. They were fantastic. I love Danny Bowes and Luke Morley. Luke's one of the best songwriters we've ever produced in the UK, in my very humble opinion. And I was on with John doing Child in Time with Thunder's band. It was just such a moment, man. And at the gig was a band called Sons of Albion. Right. And this guy, this beautiful, handsome chap comes up to me called Logan. He was like, "Oh, all right, Steve." And my wife was like, "Who the hell is that?" I was like, "Oh, stay away." Anyway, this Logan comes up and he's having a chat, and he said, "Oh, my dad says hello." I said, "Oh, who's your dad, dude?" He said, "Oh, Robert Plant." I was like, "Oh, fair play." So a couple of weeks later, Robert calls and says, "Listen, I'm out with Alison Krauss. Can you teach me do you know anything about Appalachian Mountain music?" And I was like, "Well, a little bit. I know Ricky Skaggs and a bit of that sort of stuff." And he said, can you teach me about harmonies? I said, oh, no, mate, I'm not a teacher. He said, and I said, why don't we speak to my mate, Margot, because she's a singing teacher as well as being a brilliant singer.
Right.
And he was like, Nan, I want you to teach me. I love the harmonies in the stories. I said, I didn't even do the harmonies in the stories. It was the other boys. Anyway, he wouldn't take no for an answer, so I ended up in a studio with my mate teaching Robert Plant harmony singing. You know, I talk about imposter syndrome when I didn't know what was going on. It was fantastic, though. And he's such a sweet guy.
Before I let you go, let me just squeeze in a couple of things with you. Grand Ambitions, which is you're doing now.
Yes.
Yes, which is down the Grand Theatre. That's a great thing. And if you can incorporate the birthday gala on 20th of July as
That's
well.
right.
Yeah.
The birthday gala. So we got a big gala. So Grand Ambition are a creative collective that started at the Grand Theatre. And it's about, as we come out of the thing that we can't talk about, you know, which our business got a big... Everybody got a hit, but I think theatre and music really got a kick in. We're helping put some, you know, theatre together, some new stuff, new writing. And there's a big grand gala on the 23rd of July to celebrate the Grand Theatre's 125th anniversary. And this, you know, we got Kevin Johns and Mal Pope. We got Rhea Jones, West
Lovely.
End legend.
Yeah, no Rhea. Yeah.
I'm having a turn. There's a couple of new artists. There's a young rap guy called Mose One Time. Fantastic. Ify Awobi, a great composer and singer-songwriter. We've got Valley Rock Voices, a 200-strong women's choir.
Wow.
And then we got some acting bits with the resident people who work at the theatre, so Llewellyn Theatre Company and Mellon Arts. They're all going to... So we're going to really celebrate the building and celebrate the talent that have gone through the doors of the Grand Theatre, of which there have been tons of brilliant stuff.
Is Ian Parsons involved in that as
Ian
well?
Parsons is a bit... Listen, I absolutely love Ian Parsons. He is one of the nicest people and one of the most knowledgeable people about the Grand Theatre.
I know Ian for a lot, many years.
I love the guy.
Yeah.
I love the bones of him.
Beautiful
We all
stuff
do at
indeed.
Grand Ambition.
So Grand Ambition is there to actually create young talent as well, isn't it?
We're going to be nurturing new talent coming through and new, both theatre, both writing, because we're very into...
So if anybody wants to get in, can people get in touch with you?
Come on, have a look for us on Facebook. It's Grand Ambition, Swansea, I think, Grand Ambition Swansea. And just plug in. And we're going to be writing new singer-songwriter nights, new writing, script writing slam, you know, where we get people together and new writing and get some new writers with some established writers and do some showings of the work where we get actors to act out the bits. It's really exciting, Wyn, and very, very creative. So, and
Lovely.
The people I'm working with, Rich, Michelle and Christian, they're just very clever and done so much.
We met them, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago?
That's right.
We did, yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Well, thanks so much for spending the time this afternoon. Thanks for coming to see me. Thanks for being my After 5 guest today. And well,